So there are two verses out of the gospel lesson that I'm going to spend some time around today. But I want to remind you, because one of them is pretty much in the middle and the other one very much toward the end. Jesus has fed the 5,000 men and all the women and children who were there as well, miraculously. That's what happened in last week's gospel lesson. As this week's lesson begins, immediately, I've pointed out before, Mark loves that word, immediately. Jesus made his disciples get into the boat, start rowing across the lake without him. And he dismissed the crowds. And then he goes up to a place to pray apart by himself. Another characteristic of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. He shows us the importance of being by ourselves in prayer with the Father. And he models that for us in our life of discipleship today. And then in the late part of the night, the wind has come up. The disciples are having some trouble making headway against the wind. And Jesus is walking by. And they think they've seen a ghost. And they cry out in fear. And in verse 50, Jesus says, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." So that little piece of verse 50, because it's just the second half, is going to be the major focus this morning. So what Jesus says are the two words you see underneath the word message. Ego, eimi. The first word is just the first person pronoun. I. We get our word ego from it. May not surprise you. And eimi is simply the first person present active indicative of the verb eimi, to be. Or if you learned your Greek from a German influence professor, you'll say eimi, whatever you'd like. If someone calls out to you and asks, "Who's there?" what do you say? Do you say, "It's me"? Or do you say, "It is I"? If you want to be grammatically correct, you say, "It is I." Little piece of trivia, it's a predicate nominative. It is I. It's me works. But you'll notice that the Bible in the English doesn't translate it that way. It says, "It is I." Oh, they want to be grammatically correct. There's some things happening with that two-word phrase, 3 words in the English, that are intriguing. And I'd like to take you through some of that. So, ego, eimi. In English, E-G, the O is omega. It's a long O, or the W. And then E-I-M-I. I, it is, literally. If you want to translate it literally in the order the words are there, that's the way it is. I, it is. The I is up front. It's reinforcing, emphasizing. I, it is I. You can say this phrase in Greek without the I there, without the ego. Imagine that, removing the ego from I. And just have the verb, eimi. And you would translate it, "It is I." Or, you can translate this, "I am." When I've taught Greek in the past, students get a little tired of me saying, in Greek, context is king, because it really is. In English grammar, word order is probably king, I suppose. There's a certain order you learn how to construct a sentence. And in Greek, doesn't matter so much. It's an inflected language. Words get prefixes and suffixes added to them, especially verbs and adjectives. And the function of a word in a sentence is indicated by what it looks like, by what kind of prefix or add, and sometimes the whole thing gets completely changed. I, it is, or I am. Context will determine how you translate it. In this particular context, clearly, it requires being translated, "It is I." But I am is still there. That's why I printed it with the title, not in the English, but in the Greek, so you could see it. So if you're reading that in the original, you see that. You cannot escape something. You just can't get away from it. The ego eimi is the I am of Moses and the burning bush. When Moses asks of God, okay, if I do this, go back to Egypt, where I'm a wanted man, by the way, just in case you're interested. The people are going to want to know who sent me. I need your name. But he knew that was a trump card. In that culture, there's no way a stranger, let alone a God, would give you his name. But God calls his bluff. And I mix gambling metaphors there. Sorry, I'm not the best poker player. And he gave him his name. The Hebrew, the English transliteration of the Hebrew is Yahweh. It works. It isn't real exact, but it's what we're using these days. Yahweh. And it means, as you know, I am. That's my name. And in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the words there, Yahweh, is translated into the Greek as ego eimi, I am. Every time you encounter that phrase in the Scripture, this name of God jumps out at you. And so in this story, in the midst of this blustery wind with Jesus doing this pretty interesting thing of walking on the water, it's their version of God and Moses in the burning bush. It's their I am moment. In John's gospel, you encounter this term over and over again. One of the characteristics of his gospel are the I am statements of Jesus. Each and every time he uses that phrase, he's claiming to be the God who spoke to Moses in the burning bush. I am. So in John you read, I am the way, the truth, and the life. To Mary and Martha he said, I am the resurrection and the life. And then he proved it by calling Lazarus out of the grave and giving him back to his sisters and his friends alive. In the closing verses of John 8, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God who spoke to Moses out of the burning bush. I am. I am the good shepherd. I am the vine. And you know others. I am the true gate. I am the door. In the storm, for those disciples, they discovered an I am moment. It was their burning bush time. Prior to this, or just after it, I guess, Jesus gets in the boat, boom, the wind is calm. And what does Mark say? They didn't really get it. They didn't understand the real meaning of the loaves, of the miracle Jesus had done the day before, because their hearts were hardened. So immediately after that, and I use that word immediately on purpose because Mark likes it, and he's used it a couple times already, Jesus gives them this experience. If you wonder, this is my opinion, why in the world did he send them off by himself? Why didn't he wait and go with them? So this could happen. So they could have their burning bush moment. So the light, pun intended, would begin to dawn. So that they could have their I am moment with Jesus. In the midst of the storm, I am is present. It's a little tough not to allegorize. I don't want to go there too much, but we have stormy times in our lives. And I am is present. Every one of those instances can be not only a reality we have to do with, but a reminder in and of itself. We are not alone. I am is present. When you're lonely, I am. Thank you. When you worry, Jesus rescues, because he's the I am. I encounter a slide like this, and every time we called that out and sang about that during this last week, I remembered Wham Jr. That's what we called him, Walter A. Meyer Jr. He was a prof of ours at the seminary. Some of you are old enough to remember his father, Walter A. Meyer Sr., a long-sainted speaker of the Lutheran Hour in that ministry radio program. And Wham Jr. taught a couple of classes, and he talked really fast. I mean, there's no way I can even begin. You hear what he said, and he is literally 3 sentences beyond that. It's just really tough to keep up with him. And it was that one day we were in Romans, and somehow he had jumped to Philippians, and that passage, and Philippians 4, worry about nothing, be anxious about. Okay, gentlemen, let's call a spade here. Worry is sin. And then he was about 4 sentences past, and we're all going, wait, what did you just, and we've all worried. And I suppose, and I'm not going to suppose, he's right in the way of if that's our standard, if we just give ourselves over to worry. Anxiety, worries, concerns, they're a natural part of life. We're human beings, and God doesn't expect us not to be. But if we so focus on that to the extent of leaving him out of the picture, then Wham Jr.'s right. Whether it's that or just the worries of life, they're tough sometimes to ignore. But by the presence of Christ and the great I am, he says, even those experiences, built into them for you is the reminder, I am. I am with you. I am for you. I invite you to spend an hour or so this week reading the 54 volumes of the American edition of Luther's works. Maybe it'll take you 4 or 5 hours. And look for, as you read them, those 2 words, not I am, but for you. They were important to Luther. They're all over his writings, all over them, and his sermons, which occupy about 3 volumes of that 54. All over. Jesus understood, or Luther understood, the I am, Jesus, enfleshed, was for us. He came for us to be Emmanuel with us. And we are never apart from him. When you struggle, I am is there to remind you that he has struggled for us. I'll read again the story of his prayer time in the Garden of Gethsemane. There's a spiritual struggle going on. But at the same time, in the midst of that, he knows the I am of the Father's presence. Not my will, but yours. When we struggle, there is Christ in the midst of it. When you do wrong, we talked about that in terms of sin. You can say it, you don't have to hold it back there. I am. He has rescued us already. And he reminds us of that. And he invites us to hold on to that. When you're powerless, I am. I am no longer powerless, by the way. I think I shared that about a month and a half or so ago. And someone whose name will, go unsaid, but his initials are Chuck Broadus. He gave me this sign. So if you look at the top of my monitor now in my office, it says PDS, Imperial Ruler. So I am now, in my own mind at least, powerful. But in those moments when I forget that, Christ is already powerful for me. He is the I am. And in that moment and experience that most epitomizes in human life, powerlessness, it's the reality of our own dying. But already there, waiting for me, Christ is I am. As surely as he is I am here and in this present moment. He's already filling that moment. It's present to him because he is I am. And that will not be an experience of powerlessness. It will be the ultimate victory of the greatest power. The power of God to say life and conquer death. I am. So, it is I am. Lord Jesus, come. I am so thankful you are the I am. Jesus and the disciples get to the other side of the lake. Everyone recognizes him. They begin to gather people from everywhere, sometimes carrying them on pallets to bring them to him to heal. And in verse 55 it says, they ran about the whole region to bring the sick people on their beds to wherever they heard he was. News traveled. They knew where he was because people were telling. How does the world know Jesus is the I am? How does the world know where he is? I hope you'll look in the mirror, because you and I, in the grace of God, are the answer to that question. The I am dwells within us. I am, you are, a temple of the living God. Everywhere you go this week, Christ is with you, and the I am shines through you. And we have the opportunity in our unique ways and set of relationships to be for you, as Christ is for us and for all humankind. We have the opportunity to speak I am. I invite you to rise and sing.